Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Please get comfortable, and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Let me just make sure that this is working. Yeah. We're just going to give everyone just a few more minutes to settle in. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see so many new people. And so many of you were so eager and excited. You actually joined us a little bit earlier too. I've like always love seeing that. We get started in a few minutes. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Global Changemakers event. My name is Leslie. I am the Director of Operations at PIM, and it's really my pleasure to be able to host this event today and be able to see all of you guys. I see a lot of new names too, so I'm seeing a lot of new people that are joining our events for the very first time. So that's always really exciting. And yeah, right before we get started, just a few things. Just in case there are a few of us are still not super familiar with Zoom. I think that's pretty rare now because we all survived COVID. But just in case you're not quite super familiar with all the new features, can you guys all do me a big favor? Scroll down to the bottom of your screen, and there should be a button that says React or Reactions. Depending on whichever version you have, it may look like a heart or it may look like a smiley face with a little plus sign. Can you click on that? And then click on the applause sign. So with hands clapping, please, just because we deserve some applause today for everyone. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hi, Wen. And see a few more from everyone. Okay. Nice. Shaza, Shanaz, thank you. I hope I said your name right. Thank you. Right. Okay. So this is our kind of emojis feature here on Zoom. And as you guys know, like online events, it's a lot harder for our speaker and us to kind of gauge the audience's your reaction to what we're talking about. So if you hear something that really resonates with you, that's really empowering, you think is really awesome, like feel free to use these emojis, just shower them at us. It's a really good way for us to just kind of know where you're at. Okay, so don't be shy. Don't be shy and use these. And now, really quickly, can you guys do me another favor? Scroll down to the bottom again, and click on the icon that says chat. So once you click on the button that says chat, a chat box should pop up. And then once you're in that chat box, can you guys all type in your name and what country you're currently in? Kind of want to know where everyone is right now. So I'm going to start with Hawa in Ghana. Yes, I'm in Beijing, China. Oh, Glenn's from Singapore. Sophia's in Ghana too. Nice, nice. Okay, we have a few that's in Ghana. Wen's in Canton, China. Okay, Melody's in Taipei. Nice. Azerbaijan, nice. Okay, wow, we have really quite the diversity here, everyone, where you're joining. This is so amazing just because today's topic is about creating impact in across different borders, kind of all over the world globally. So it's great to see people from everywhere. Oh, Tony's from Madagascar too. Very nice. Hers is very beautiful over there. Okay, so now you guys know you guys have found the chat room function in Zoom. So feel free to use this space here to ask any questions you guys have for our speaker. Just dump those questions in there. We have our beautiful Melody in the background here that's also helping us collect questions. We're gonna go into and dive into all of that in the Q&A after our interview with Hawa. So feel free to add your questions in here, but also use this space to just connect with each other as well and engage with each other, because we are very community oriented, and this is a good way for you to get to know other like-minded people. Because obviously, if you're all here for this event, you're all interested in very similar topics, and it'll be a good way for you to just meet other people. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Want to just really quickly tell you a little bit about PIM. I don't know how many of you have done have known about PIM previously. Maybe some of you are alumni of our programs, maybe some of you are partners, or maybe a few of you are completely brand new to PIM and had just been kind of heard through the grapevine about this event. But a little bit about PIM. So it stands for Purpose in Motion. We are a social enterprise that empowers young people with the education, resources, and network to be mission-driven leaders and effective change makers. So what that really means is that we empower young people to make a change in their own communities and kind of all over the world. Right. And then what's really exciting, and this is why we're hosting these events now, these events are really a celebration of all our work that we've done in the last 10 years. So this year is actually our 10th anniversary. And just looking back at what we've achieved in the last 10 years, we've impacted over 13,000 aspiring leaders. And our programs have reached over 110 countries all over the world, both online and offline. So we've really have become global even though we started in Asia, and we've mobilized over $850,000 just to help create more funding for organizations and startups to further their social impact journey. Right? These are things that we're really, really proud of and wanted to find a way to help celebrate that. Right. And so this year, in celebration of our 10th anniversary, we're hosting 10 different separate anniversary events, impact events, just talking about different themes around social impact. And today's our sixth or seventh event. And so we have plenty more to come for the rest of the year. So make sure that you guys stay in touch with us. Visit our website, pimglobal.org/celebrations, and learn more about all our upcoming events. All right. Okay, now without further ado, let me introduce our star tonight, our Hawa Kombian. So she really is one of the most inspiring kind of social entrepreneurs that I have met kind of in a long time. Not only that she has a real breadth of the different industries that she's worked in for social impact, but she's also managed to do that in multiple different countries. I think she's lived and worked in almost 7 countries all over the world. So a little bit about her. So she's has over 10 years of experience in business strategy and organizational management across Africa and North America. And she really has a proven track record of enhancing the alignment, profitability, and sustainability of impact-driven organizations in many different sectors, like as I mentioned, like research, digital health, and leadership development. And then she went on to found her own firm, so Hawa Kombian Consulting, where she coaches, facilitates, and speaks in order to advance the future of work with Africa's leaders. All right. It really is a pleasure for us to welcome her tonight. So can you guys all give her like a really warm welcome? Send her a lot of the like clapping emojis, please, as we welcome her. Great. Hi, Hawa. How are
Thank
you
you.
today?
Hi. Hi, Leslie. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And thank you for all the folks throwing love into the chat. It's great to be here today. And I'm excited to celebrate Kim's 10-year anniversary. Incredible amount of impact. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah, lots of love in the chat room here. When I love all those claps. You really have like spammed us, which I love. Keep spamming us. Keep it coming. Right. Okay, yeah, let's just dive in right now because there's just never enough time to really get to know your full story. But as I had
Mhm.
mentioned, and with today's theme here, you really have created and worked in social impact in multiple different countries. So maybe really
Mhm.
quickly, let's just go through your quick timeline of your life, like where you've been, where you worked, how you grew up. So yeah, let's take it back to the beginning. So how was your early
Yeah.
childhood like?
Yeah, lovely. Thanks for this, Leslie. So I grew up in Canada. I was born in Western Canada and lived between Canada and the US while I was still quite a young child. And then when I was around the age of 8, my family moved halfway around the world to Kuwait, which is in the Middle East. And I lived in Kuwait for 10 years, finished high school there, had a really mind-opening experience there that I is sometimes still crazy to look back on, but just a really formative time. And then for my higher education and university, I moved back to Canada to a different part of the country and studied for a while. Um, and then took a gap year and decided, well, you know, both of my parents are or were born and bred in Ghana, and my entire extended family lives there. And so I had always had short summer opportunities to visit, but had never really had an extended period of time to really embed myself there and learn about my culture more deeply. So I decided that post uni gap year was going to be in Ghana. And that's where a lot of social impact spark started flying for me. Um, and then that led me back to Canada, where I really kicked off my career and started working jobs and roles that had me really excited and motivated about exploring social impact in different ways. And then I got the itch again to travel. And this was kind of spurred by my master's studies. And I was like, I want to do more. I want to learn more. And so I ended up traveling around Europe for a while I was doing my master's. And that's what actually helped plant me back on the continent of Africa, working full time in a kind of humanitarian development context, which is where my heart really was at that point in time. And since then, I've been really passionate about social impact in Africa and working to change the narrative around what that looks like for professionals, but also for entrepreneurs.
Right. Yeah. No, that's so inspiring to hear. I think there really is a theme. Like you've kind of the landscape of your life has changed in a lot of ways. You moved to different
Mm-hmm.
countries, different cultures, obviously different languages, and yet there really is a thread that you just want to continue making social impact wherever you are. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that gets me really curious too. Like, when would you say was kind of the first time in your life that you kind of got interested in social impact or kind of learned of what that is and then realized you wanted to do something about it in your life?
So kind of want to answer this two ways, because I think there's like a subconscious answer to this, and then there's a more conscious, oh, I'm aware of, you know, all of these big ideas I'm having and how they connect.
Hmm.
So subconsciously, it was probably the first time I ever went to Ghana to see my family, my whole extended family. And I was about 5 years old at the time. And when you've kind of grown up in this very Western bubble, and that is what you normalize, and that is what you consider as your baseline,
Hmm.
traveling to a place like West Africa, Ghana, where my parents are from, and the rural parts of Ghana. So I'm not talking big city, I'm talking where my grandparents raised my parents, and those very kind of local, simple, traditional environments and cultures, that was a huge shift. And I just remember like learning how people, the way people eat, what people eat, the rituals, the traditions. And even at the age of 5, it was so different from my kind of structured North American upbringing. And I think subconsciously, that's when things started to click that, you
Hmm.
know what, this might seem very different, but it's also a part of me.
Hmm.
These things that seem really foreign are also the building blocks of what helped make me who I am and who I will continue to be. So I think subconsciously it started from those very early trips to Ghana, which I'm so grateful that my parents invested in that, because it helped myself and my older brother connect to our roots from a very early age. But then consciously, I think it was when I was in university in Canada doing
Hmm.
my first degree, and I volunteered with the World University Service of Canada, and they were helping student refugees come to Canada and study.
Oh.
And it was my first interaction with meeting refugees from Africa conflict, and what their experience had been like, what they were overcoming, how transitioning from Africa into a Western culture felt like for them, because I had always taken that for granted because I grew up in that environment. And I think that's when it really started to click for me that there's a world much bigger than what my day to day looks like, and that there are a lot of opportunities to connect with people and learn. And so that's when I think it really, from that childhood moment to that kind of more mature, but also more connected to people from different backgrounds as well.
Right. Okay. Wow, that is really fascinating. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really interesting. You gave us a little context of how you grew up too. So, and obviously, grew up in a very Western environment, Canada and the United States, and then you spent
Hmm.
a lot of formative years in Kuwait. So maybe by the time you really
Yeah.
spent significant time in Ghana, uh, you're actually more familiar, like you were probably even more familiar with Kuwait than you are with Ghana. So I'm sure that would have been quite, like a, a unique kind of transition for you. And this experience too, like learning,
Hmm.
helping student refugees kind of transition, I think that is really interesting as well. So digging in just a little bit further, then, um, what was
Yeah.
that really your very first kind of social impact experience? Was it that, or was it kind of in Ghana?
So I feel like my first experience really getting close to the work and understanding how organizations really show up and do the front end work, the back end work to make social impact a reality and to sustain it, that really happened in Ghana. And this was during the gap year period. And I'll be honest, for me, the gap year was great. I'm going to go take a break and hang out in an environment I don't usually get to be in. I didn't necessarily go into it with this deep intention of I'm going to volunteer and get more invested in social impact. So much of my journey was serendipitous of connecting with people who really inspired me and also gave me opportunities to contribute and participate. So I had an aunt, very dear aunt, who to this day still runs an organization focused on supporting vulnerable street children who are
Mm,
very marginalized in our part of Ghana, which is already considered quite a vulnerable and less economically stable region. So to already kind of live in that part of the country and then also have young, vulnerable children who are effectively homeless and don't really have that many opportunities for care and nurturing, my aunt kind of brought me in and was like, yeah, like, why don't you come to the office with us one day? Why don't you meet some of the other people we're working with? Why don't you come on me to a field trip and a field visit where we're going out to meet beneficiaries? And that just completely blew my mind wide open. At the time, I had just graduated with my degree in communications. And so I was like, you know what I can do right now? I can write. I can talk about what I'm seeing. I can talk about these young people who have come from very challenging circumstances, who are tapping into all of this courage to try and change their life and change their circumstances, even though they've had a very unstable, difficult, painful road from childhood. And so I spent the better part of that year traveling with my aunt, learning about the different programs they were implementing, and just writing and documenting what I was seeing and what I was learning. And it was such a great reflective experience for me. And over time, I started to realize that as my friends and family back in Canada and the Middle East were reading about what I was doing, that people were really connecting with what I was talking about, and people were really kind of like inspired and encouraging about what I was doing. And that was kind of what made me feel like this could actually be a viable path for me. Like this feels good and it's making a difference and it's helping other people reflect and challenge their own thinking or even consider things that on an average Monday to Friday would never really cross their mind because of what is normalized in their routine and their habits. So Ghana was really the foundation where a real career, I think, started to materialize for me.
right. No, I mean, that's really great to hear. It's obviously, but it always really just like tugs on my heartstrings too. Just knowing that you're working with all these children that had really needed it in Ghana. But I,
Yeah.
I also like how you would kind of explain this. I think the reality is, especially in the field of social impact, it's not
Mhm.
not a field that you necessarily learn about in university, right? When you're trying to figure out who you want to be, what's the career path that you want to have. Rarely is your guidance counselor going to just walk up to you and be like, "Oh, I think you should pursue a career in social impact," right? It's usually something more specific or tangible. It's like, "Oh, do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be an accountant? Do you want to be a lawyer?" All these things. And so I think a lot of us kind of go through life not necessarily realizing that there is a viable
Mhm.
career there. We probably do feel like a personal urge or like a calling to do some good in the world, but we don't necessarily know how you can maybe turn that into something viable that you can continue working on. And I think Ghana was really that foundation for you, like exploring that. So we'll dive into that a little bit
For sure.
more. But back to like Ghana, what were some of the biggest kind of cultural challenges that you kind of experienced, obviously up in the West and then
Yeah.
now in Ghana and needing to kind of work and operate in almost essentially a foreign country for you, that you're kind of like fresh off the boat in. Like what was that adjustment like for you and kind of any tips you have for us, like going to a new country and how to kind of get your feet wet
Yeah.
and working with a local community?
Yeah. I really love this question, Leslie, because I still feel like some of these things bubble up sometimes for me, even though I've now been living and working here steadily for over 6 years, not counting the gap year and all the times I would come back when I was younger with my family. But honestly, I mean, if you were to take a typical diversity wheel and look at all the different possible experiences that a human could come in and have, I mean, all of those things apply, right? So gender is a factor.
Mhm.
And at times, even the role that women play and the respect that women are warranted in certain circles, in certain cultural circles, in certain professional circles, that is a factor that's at play, um, that I experience. Language, for sure. I mean, I grew up speaking English, and my parents grew up speaking at least five local dialects. And
Gosh.
even when I come to Ghana, like I can go out and meet family members, and people will be speaking three or four different languages. So that from the jump can also be a barrier if you let it, but it can be
Mhm.
something that in the initial phases, right? Even acknowledging the privilege that we have being English speakers and assuming that everywhere we go, everyone's going to speak English. And that's going to be the mode with which communication and meaning happens in,
Mhm.
right? And appreciating that sometimes it was sitting down with my grandmothers who had never left their village and who didn't speak English well, and really just being able to say, we don't even have to speak. Sometimes it's just about being in your presence and showing you that, like, I'm here and we're sharing space and we're cooking a meal or we're doing something together, right? So appreciating that communication goes so much more beyond like the structure and the protocol and the written word and a lot of the things that we lean on from a Western perspective,
Mhm.
right? And then other things like education. Education is not as standardized out here. It's not something where, I remember growing up and you could know what class someone was in or what grade someone was in, and you were already doing the math of how old is this person. Because I generally know that if most of us are in sixth grade, we're around the age of 11. If most of us are in 12th grade, we're around the age of 17 or 18. But that's not standard out here. Everyone's situation and circumstances are different. So some people don't get access to education until much later, right? But that doesn't mean that they lack knowledge, right? That doesn't mean that they lack the autonomy and the thoughtfulness and the spirit of innovation and development to be participating and leading the development of their own solutions and improvement in their own community. So those were a lot of aspects that even I had to gut check my ego around when I came back during that gap year, to be like, oh, it isn't like I don't just need to hold this institution of knowledge and education that I've come from as the standard of what makes things right and what dictates how we should move. There are so many other ways that communication is happening, that knowledge is being gathered, that knowledge is being utilized to help people move in a direction that is more positive for the communities they come from and the lives that they're trying to build. And I think that was very humbling for me, and it was very eye-opening, because it was easy to grow up thinking, well, I grew up with both of my parents and both of my parents are from this culture, so obviously I can just kind of swoop in and do my thing and it'll be fine. But there was really a period of just practicing good communication by being a better listener, being a better observer, to really just say, okay, what am I perceiving here? Knowing that my perception will always have its limits. I mean, for each of us, that will always be the case, but what am I perceiving, and what value do I think I can add to the groups of people that I live with, that I work with, based on what I'm perceiving and what I'm learning from them.
Right. So well said. So well said. And so many great nuggets that you shared here. Like I think like
Yeah.
it all looks great on paper when you talk about like, oh, I started a career in social impact, in a foreign country and all this stuff. But we don't always like take the time to acknowledge what that actually looks like. And then all the challenges you actually have to go through in order to create a social impact in a country that you're not familiar with. Right. And I like where you're coming in
Mm-hmm.
at this too, like having a gut check and just checking your own ego and where you're coming in from this. So you're not coming
Yeah.
in from like almost like a saviorism kind of perspective. Like there is a lot of respect for the local community and a lot of humbleness of willing to learn, to figure out how you
Mm-hmm.
can add value, and make a meaningful contribution to the people there. No, that is really, that's really inspiring. I'm kind of getting goosebumps just just thinking about that. Are there any kind of quick stories you can kind of share with us then, about whether it's like a communication challenges or like a cultural challenges that you kind of had to overcome? And it could be like mainly in Ghana or New York, that you kind of had to overcome in order to make that kind of social impact in a foreign country.
Honestly, I think time is a factor, like time and patience, because we're very interesting and complex as humans, because it is a very loving and open-hearted idea to decide that, I want to spend a significant amount of my time and my energy doing something in the world that is going to help other people or support other people. And the truth is that the people that were, or at least let me speak for myself, the people that I've interacted with and worked with, they're not victims, right? Like, these people are not victims. And a lot of the time, they don't have this perception of like, I need saving and I need your ideas. And that can be a difficult pill to swallow if you're not prepared to slow your roll and understand what it is people are looking for outside of what your, development 101 textbook generalized for you before you actually got the opportunity to embed yourself. And I'll use myself as an example, Leslie. All of you on the call can hear me. When most people hear my voice, the first assumption is you're African American. Wherever I go, right? Like, I lived
Right.
in the Middle East as well. My voice and my accent tends to connect a dot for people that I'm African American. So even to this day, when I'm in Ghana and I'm in the village or I'm visiting relatives or whatever the case may be, people are often like, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Ghana. And they're like, no, where are you actually from? Right. And there's a bit of this disconnect because I don't sound like everyone. Right. And that used to really trigger me when I was younger. Like, like, why are people like not accepting me and giving me the space to come in and wanting to include me? At the same time, though, and, when maturity started to kick in, the truth is that when something is new or unfamiliar, it takes people time. And that is a natural process of change, right? Like, not everything is instant gratification. You know, Instagram, social media would like to kind of trick us into, okay, great, I'm going to get that degree and then jump on a plane and go here and do the thing. And in a year, I'll have this great story to tell. And it's like, yeah, you might not, because it might take longer than that. And that's okay. There's beauty in that process of really coming into a community and space and being like, I am never going to have your experience or know your experience exactly, but I understand better. And you are never going to have my experience or understand me 100%, but you understand me better. And so it definitely took time for people to be like, oh, yeah, like you're from here and this is your family and this is how you're connected and this is how we know you, because family and association is huge in this part of the world, in West Africa. People want to know where you're from. They want to know who you're connected to. That helps them bridge and build trust. You don't just walk in and say, my accolades and my education are why you should trust me. Right. And, even when you look back on the history of like colonialism and just kind of like assumptions and patterns that people have been through there, like there's a history that has brought us to where we are. And I really think that giving things the time is really important, and not just letting your excitement or your passion for what you're doing be okay, I'm passionate about this insofar as I get results in a month and it looks good and feels good, right? But like, are you passionate enough that you're willing to do the work and show up every day and be patient with it and know that you're doing it more for the internal value of what it brings you as a person and your growth and who you want to be, more so than you're doing it for the social media photo op, right? Or the validation from people that aren't I doing such a good job that I've moved to this part of the world and I'm doing XYZ.
Right.
So I think that's really important to reckon with.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That was something I was kind of thinking about too as you were sharing this too. Like really um making sure that you're doing this and committed to this for the right reasons. To that you're
Mm-hmm.
respectful and that you're really in a committed way of wanting to make an impact, right? Rather
Mm-hmm.
than all the social media stuff now. And just this the easy glorification of like, oh, I've made an impact, kind of, right?
Yeah.
And kind of being honest with yourself. No, this is so great,
Yeah.
kind of speaking to you too, right? It just gets me so pumped, so pumped. But yeah, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's move on in your
Okay.
like timeline. So you went from Ghana, and then
Yeah.
you talked about then doing social impact work back in Canada. So
Yeah.
obviously you're going back home, so there's a little bit of a transition there too, of whether it's reverse culture shock or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But not only that, you end up doing work in a completely different sector, I think in healthcare research, right? So in Ghana, you were working with
Yeah.
like in villages with just like children that needed that under-resourced kind of children. And then you
Mm-hmm.
you go from Ghana back to Canada as like developed Western nation. And then you work in like healthcare research in an industry that don't
Yeah.
necessarily have a lot of background in, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how that transition was like for you? And do share any
Sure.
stories you have too. Love to hear your stories.
Yeah. So after spending this gap year in Ghana, I was like, okay, great. I know where my North Compass is pointing me. I know what feels good. I know what I'm excited about. And so that really helped me be intentional when I was looking for jobs in Canada. I was like, yeah, like I'm not trying to go work for some like big commercial brand like Pepsi or Coke. And I'm not trying to get into like the finance sector. Like I know I'm trying to do something that impacts people's well-being. And actually, I like a huge part of my story growing up as well is that my dad is very deep into healthcare and research. Like he's a neuropharmacologist. So I grew up with this world of healthcare and science and academia in the background of my life. And it was that premise that actually helped my parents first emigrate to Canada. So when I was looking for jobs and there was this space in the kind of health funding area and they were looking for comms people. And I was like, well, doesn't that just sound like me? And I thought, it's a long shot and I'm not even sitting in Canada right now, but this role just really speaks to me. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to just help people be healthier and to be a part of that story. So let me give it a shot and apply. And I applied and I did my interviews. I mean, Zoom was not really a thing back then. So I remember I was like doing these landline telephone interviews, hoping that the connection wouldn't cut.
Oh no.
And I eventually got the role. And they were like, "Hey, great, like prepare yourself to, move to this French speaking part of Canada." And I didn't know it until I was there for my first week on the role. And they were like, "Oh, did you realize that when you applied for the job, it was our second time of reposting the job? And we just couldn't find people that were a fit." And one of the things that they told me was they were like, "Actually, you blogging about your experience during your gap year was something that we saw and really loved," because they were looking for a comms person who could, I don't know how to put this, but like translate what is happening in one area. So that is actually, I'm coming to find, a bit of a rare skill. Like most people tend to go into their technical focus and they go deep, 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 which is great. But then when you ask them to bring their head up above water and make it make sense for other people, they really struggle because they've been in that bubble of, healthcare jargon or whatever industry that they're in, that it makes it really difficult to tell a 6-year-old what you do and have them be like, "That's interesting. And I understand. And I understand why this work matters." And so that for me was really one of the first pieces of like feedback and validation that I got, that, there's something to my approach and to my experience. And to me, also just doing the things that I enjoy, regardless of who's watching, that seems to resonate with opportunities that I get excited about. And so I think that transition, it was kind of doing what I was doing and being present in Ghana that helped me make that transition to Canada, right? And again, just being like, I'm doing this for the internal love of it and because of how it's helping me grow. And if other people see that and resonate with that, cool, that's great. But I don't wake up in the morning first thinking, what are people going to say about what I'm doing? How are people going to judge me and perceive me? And I think understanding that and leaning into that has just been very liberating. And it's made it a lot easier to walk the path and recognize the people that are also recognizing me, to be able to say, hey, like partnering or working with you could be a really good idea because we seem to be like-minded in a very organic and natural way, not in a calculated, overthinking way, which I know is sometimes is a trap that's easy to fall into.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I kind of like
Yeah.
how you mentioned that Ghana actually helped set you up for this because it at a like bird's eye level, it's hard to see that connection. Like how was working with street children in Ghana your springboard into going into, health research kind of sector in Canada? Like what is that connection there? But I think you boil it down to some things that were really like that make a lot of sense. So one thing is definitely passion. I think
Mm-hmm.
whether it was like working with street children in Ghana or wanting to help people become healthier in Canada, like you were very passionate about those missions, even though they were really different missions, but you were really passionate
Mm-hmm.
about helping these people. And I think because you were so passionate, it was your authenticity really shined through for
Yeah.
both of these communities. Like in Canada, they could see that you had a history of being authentic and wanting to really make an impact for this mission, and that's exactly what resonated with them and wanting to then give you an opportunity to work in a completely different field, different sector,
Mm-hmm.
different audience. But it's like, oh, you're guided by that passion, authenticity. And obviously, I'm sure you have a lot of other skills you're bringing to the table too. But
Yeah.
I think through and through, I think the principles you kind of shared here ring true. It's like stay humble, check your ego going into anything. If it's a new country or whether it's a new
Mm-hmm.
industry, be willing to listen and be willing to learn, and be
Yeah.
passionate and go in with it with the right reasons, right? So
Yeah. And like
yeah.
own your story as well. Because again, like the agency I ended up working for, at some point they were like, "Oh, we realized that like years ago, your dad had applied for funding to this agency." So I'm like, yeah, so like if this agency hadn't existed, who knows if I even would have been brought up in the way that I had, or would have had certain experiences based on my father getting professional opportunities, right? And it's like when you can make these emotional connections with people to
Mm-hmm.
say, like, this is bigger than just a paycheck and it's bigger than my ego. This
Mm-hmm.
is connected to something I really care about, and my story supports that narrative. I'm not having to manipulate or create that connection. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what people really connect with, because they understand that, like, a decision, what is it? Like a pebble in the river creates a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool to like see the initial drop of the pebble, but it's also cool to like stand 100 meters away and watch these ripples that, again, over time, with patience, are created from that initial pebble. And I think that is really powerful. And it's something that we are sometimes quick to dismiss and not give ourselves credit for our
Mm-hmm.
story, or diminish um, the significance of our story.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I definitely
Yeah.
agree. And a lot of people um can be quite ashamed of certain parts of their own story, right? But oftentimes, like those are the
Mm-hmm.
areas that actually give you a lot of strength. If you, really, really dig in and use that work, like they can be a guiding place for, oh, this is actually the work that I need to do because it's affecting me too. I'm also
Exactly.
someone that's affected by this. Like say it's mental health, like, oh, I struggle with anxiety and I'm really ashamed
Mm-hmm.
of it. But if I'm struggling this badly about it with it, I'm sure there's plenty of other people that are. So I want to put in the time and energy to help other people that are struggling with me, so that we could all collectively help make each other better. So yeah, no, I really love where you're coming from there.
Beautifully said, Leslie.
Yeah. We really don't
Yeah.
have enough time, unfortunately, to kind of go through everything. But I know that you're from Canada, you were helping, I think it was like researchers apply for the funding to kind of further the research.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think, you kind of at one point you kind of went back to Africa, and then was doing stuff around like humanitarian, like AIDS, HIV kind of work. Can you
Yeah.
like, quickly tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that? So that's like, still around kind of healthcare.
Yeah, for sure. So during my master's, I interned with a organization that was responding to the 2015 Ebola outbreak in West Africa. And they were doing really cool and innovative things that weren't happening in the healthcare systems in Africa. We were still doing everything on paper. And that's fine. But when you're in the middle of a healthcare crisis and you need information quickly so that you can decide, great, how many, how many vaccines or how many treatments do we need to send to the northern part of the country or the southern part of the country? Healthcare decision makers are like struggling to make the best decisions they can so that they can save as many lives as possible. And when you're trying to do things on paper and like mail a piece of paper so someone can make a decision, and even when they get that piece of paper they can't read it because your handwriting is different from my handwriting, it was just causing all of these challenges when health systems in West Africa were trying to effectively save people's lives. And this company was digitizing that whole process. So they were giving health workers tablets, like iPads, and creating these digital forms where it was like literally at the end of each day, write how many cases or how many even suspected cases of Ebola or malaria or cholera that you saw, submit it on this form, click send it by SMS or send it by data on your phone, and a decision maker will get all of that information rolled up. And those teams can make much faster decisions, which means more lives are being saved and people are healthier. So I had this really incredible opportunity to go to Sierra Leone, which is a very beautiful country that has been ravaged by conflict. They had interpersonal conflict in the 90s, and then Ebola came up as a healthcare emergency, and they just needed a lot of help and support at the time. And so it was just a very life-changing opportunity to get to work in an organization that was doing that work and responding in that way, and getting to work very closely with the leadership there.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think like kind of what Steve Jobs has said too, right? Sometimes your life it just doesn't make sense until you look back, and then you can kind of
Yeah,
connect the dots. And like it totally making sense for me now. It's like I think kind of that West Africa now, this experience is like almost like a merge of what you've done previously, the foundation you've laid down, with like
hmm,
learning how to operate in a foreign country, with in Ghana, coupled
yeah,
with kind of experience in just like healthcare, and you kind of were able to beautifully like bring that together for West Africa and then in Sierra Leone too. Like I think it was
yeah,
all the same kind of your compass was the same. It was the same principles you're going on through. But obviously you had built up more skills along the way. And it just had
yeah,
kind of unfolded in a really beautiful way for you. Like what's the next thing? Now talking about the next thing, I know now you are now
yeah,
your own social entrepreneur. You've kind of created your own company. So can you
yeah.
really quickly, not to do a plug for you, but can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now? And for any African that are on the call today, like I think this is something you definitely want to hear and get involved.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Leslie. So actually from this Sierra Leone experience, right? Again, the next thing leads to the next thing leads to the next thing. When I was working in Sierra Leone, I had just finished my master's and I was like, great, I'm going to be a healthcare worker. Like I'm going to be on the field, like people that you see on CNN or BBC, right? And when I got into this organization, they were like, actually, we want you to work on leadership. We want you to work with the founders and work on everything internal that has to do with leadership and how we're strategic as a company. And that was all new to me. And I was like, okay, great, if that's what's being presented. And so this gave me a very beautiful opportunity to dive into the leadership space and learn about organizational management in the impact space. So, yes, generally, what does it take a company to run and function and be great with its people, but more so a company that is also trying to help people in the external world. And so my career trajectory started to shift into that area. After leaving that role, I worked with the African Leadership Group, who were all about training young Africans in digital tech skills. And I just deepened that passion and that awareness and that observation around, it doesn't really matter what environment I seem to be in. What are the repeat challenges that are coming up around people being centered in the workplace so that they can go out to do inspiring, passionate work that helps other people? Right? And really tapping into that. So now the company that I run now, I'm so passionate and energized by really helping leaders bring the future of work into what they do, and not just a digital tech future of work, which is what most of us hear or think about when that term comes up, but a future of work that is focused on investing in people
Mhm.
and their growth so that they can then be these ambassadors and champions of change, because it's all an inner journey, right? Like the work that we do on the inside is actually what reflects on the outside. It's not
Yeah.
about the flash and the pomp and the circumstance that gets you, attention and eyeballs, if behind the scenes and behind the curtain things are falling apart. And especially in social impact, where we talk so much about sustainability and things lasting a long time. How well are organizations and companies actually creating that in their own structure so that they can also create it in the environments that they're in? Like, how are we being focused on that alignment? So, a lot of my work is focused on honestly helping people challenge their mindset, bring more compassion into the work that they do, bring more compassion into their own understanding of their growth journey. And
Mhm.
even when it doesn't make sense, like mine, being able to still have the creativity and the space to carve out the kind of professional direction that they want. And then also helping organizations have stronger cultures, better customer experience, right? Actually planning towards a lot of these really incredible and impressive strategic goals, like all of this 10-year anniversary progress that you just shared about Pim, right? Like actually helping companies think about how do we want to get there in a way
Mhm.
that is socially minded, in a way that leverages the people that we have with us so that we're creating impact within our staff, and
Mhm.
then they are becoming that ripple effect out into our community that creates impact with the beneficiaries and partners that we work with. So that's a lot of what I do today and and what I'm really
That
passionate
that's
about.
amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think it really is. I think it really it was also a culmination of your own journey, right? It's also
Hmm.
like helping youth like figure out what their passions are, what they want to show up to do, like the impact they want to do, and then really helping them develop the tools now to help navigate those different transitions. And in this case, it's kind
Yeah.
of navigating a transition into tech. So developing like tech skills so that you can be more employable and then there's more potential for you. I love that so much. We are running out of time, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna pull the slides back up real quick. We only
Okay.
have a few minutes, so we're going to dive into Q&A, but really quickly, this is how you can get in touch with Hawa. If you are feeling like me, I'm like super pumped and inspired. I can't wait to hear more. We're definitely catching up again soon, Hawa. I want to hear more of your story. So make
For
sure you
sure.
follow her. Like this is her website information, her personal and professional LinkedIn. And for anyone that is based in Africa, make sure you check out what she's doing now too, especially it'll be really useful and helpful for you. But
Yeah.
we probably have time for one or two questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? Um, Feel free to submit your questions in the chat room. It could be about anything that Hawa did in her career. It could be about
Hmm.
working internationally across cultures or into just transitioning from different sectors, industries. Any questions? Okay, so one from Gigi here. So I'm curious, with your background, how was your job search in Canada being a foreigner in that sense? Well, I guess
So,
you're born there, so you are Canadian. So weren't really
yeah,
a foreigner.
exactly.
Mhm.
I was born in Canada. So, as a foreigner, I didn't struggle to find work and like come back after my gap year. However, when I was looking for work after my master's, honestly, some of that was just my master's program because we had a mandatory internship. And so I connected with eHealth Africa initially as an intern. And so they were happy to take me on and they were like, yeah, great. Come to Sierra Leone for a few months, do your internship. And then at the end of that internship, they were like, what if you decided to stay? And then I ended up staying on for about 3 years. So honestly, that one was more about connecting with like-minded people, I would say, who were then willing to take a chance on me based on my path, based on how aligned we were, um, to make that opportunity tangible. So
Right.
that's how I navigated moving around.
Oh, that's
Thanks for the
awesome.
question.
Yeah. So Gigi says, sounds fantastic. Great learning opportunity from yourself. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think like that's just something that's part of your own journey too. I'm sure of all the other amazing skills that you picked up along the way, you just have to learn to be really resourceful. Having lived and worked internationally, that not every country just operates the way that your home country is. And if you want to be able to assimilate and actually effectively work in a foreign country, you do need to be more resourceful about how you're going to go about this and how you're going to create those opportunities for yourself. So definitely, it's really great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions? I have time for just one more.
Okay.
No? Okay. Well, then I'm gonna move on to the next page. So really quickly, everyone, thank you for joining us today. If you guys can all just do me a favor and just pull out your phones and scan this QR code. Help us just fill in a quick feedback form so that we get to hear your feedback about today's events and how we can improve and what other topics you'd like us to cover. Please feel free to scan that. And as you're scanning that, have a few minutes that I kind of just want to summarize some things that I definitely learned from Hawa today. Uh, I just every time that I like chat to you, oh, wait, sorry,
Mhm.
the screen still sharing. Let me just make sure it's still. Can everyone still see my screen? Share.
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, just every time I chat to you, I think there's just like new nuggets that come up. But for today in this conversation, I think around this theme that we have today of how do you create a global, like a social impact across borders in different countries and in different industries, I think they really boil down to a few things. Like, first of
Mhm.
all, I think you really need to be guided by the right reasons of why you wanted to do this. So passion is a
Mhm.
big part of it, but knowing that, oh, I'm in it, I'm committed passionately to try to make a social impact. And it's not just um for the social media photo op, right? It's not for these kind of
Mhm.
reasons. They're really from coming from a place of like that you really want to make this impact. So making sure that you have the right reasons is really important. But some other things that I think really guided here is what you talked about, being humble and knowing to check your ego. So regardless of where we're from, we probably have a lot of our own kind of assumptions of how the world works. So because of your
Mhm.
home country. And then you need to be willing to kind of put that aside and challenge your own ego and what you know as you enter into a new country. And to be willing to listen and learn from the local people, right? That where knowing that like they may or may not want your ideas, and no matter how great you think they are, they may or may not have a place there. Right? Your job is not to force these things on other people. Your job really is to help, um, support the people there. So being humble in that way is really important. But I also like how you were saying that just be true to your own story too. Be authentic the entire time, right? Resourceful and authentic, uh, and making sure that that helps guide you on your own journey. And I think those are the
Mhm.
things that you did for that helped make you successful across different borders, but it's also what helped you jump in between industries, even if you didn't have any prior experience. You were really willing to learn, and you were very driven by the right reasons and the right passion. So I think I'm going to leave that with everyone here. And then back to this screen. And then last but not least, make sure that you follow Pim for all future 10th anniversary events. So this is our website, our LinkedIn information. Feel free to also scan this QR code so that you can join our LinkedIn group, our Pim Impact community. So we're posting a lot of exclusive content there, mainly around our 10th anniversary. So feel free to scan and add us. I'll give you guys a few minutes, right? And then I know we're running over time a little bit. And then last but not least, can you guys all turn on your screens? Don't be shy. It's time for a group photo. We'd love to capture this moment with everyone. So please turn on your screens. I'm gonna stop sharing my slides for a moment. Um, and then Melody, if you can help us take that photo too, please. So Gigi,
Yes,
Wen,
no
Tony,
problem.
can you guys please turn on your screens, please? And Samsung.
Or we see a beautiful table.
Yeah. Oh, hi. Hi, there you are.
Hello.
Tony and Wen. Right. Okay. I think that's okay. Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take the photo.
Okay. We're gonna do two.
Okay.
We're gonna do a serious one, and then we'll do a fun one. Okay.
Okay,
Three,
Okay.
2, 1. Cheers.
great. That was
Okay.
fun.
All right, and then we're gonna do one more. Just make it really silly. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Cheers. Nice. I love the peace sign. So many of us got the peace sign.
I think it activated bubbles, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was
I
I
saw
love
bubbles. I
that.
don't know.
yeah. No, that's really
You're
great.
okay.
Okay.
Well,
Thanks,
thanks for
Glenn.
sharing.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's.
thanks for being
Yeah,
here.
easy. All right.
Yeah.
Have a good one, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hawa, again.
You too.
Thanks, Melody and
Yeah, you're
Leslie,
welcome.
for
Yeah.
hosting.
We will share this recording shortly in a little bit too. Thank you, Melody, for joining us today too and helping out. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Hawa.
Thank you, Leslie.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate everyone's time and energy.
Absolutely. So thank you. Thank you.